Hi guys, how's it going? Ivano here with the highlights from Game 2 of the 7 vs 7 Warzone challenge that we played the other weekend. It's round 2, Voidstar, and the question is, can Team Ivano come back against Team Snave, who of course took the first round on N.O.H.A coast? Again, the rules on this one were similar. We had a gentleman's agreement that both teams will ignore the objectives and simply meet on the left side and farm kills deathmatch style, and whoever gets the most kills after 2 rounds wins the game. So much about the rules, let's look at the comps. We did have some changes. So Asana and Serazi switching from the Arsenal Merc that did not work great in the last one. Now Asana is playing Annihilation Marauder and Sorgrazi switched to Lightning. We also had one substitution. Amarilla Smith is coming in on Deception for Kip Durone, while the rest of the players stayed unchanged. So jumping into the match, we can see that Yugi, the Genius Marauder, is indeed playing Annihilation. You can see that from the Spiteful Saber tactical, which is of course the Annihilation one. So some more melees on Team Ivano compared to the last round. Now there's 3 melees compared to the 4 melees on Team Snave. So Crazy playing Elemental Convection, which means he's playing the AoE Lightning build that I already spotlighted on my channel a while ago. So if you want to see that guide, check it out. So we go into the match. And you can see, well, basically the melees of each team trying to go onto the backline of the enemy team. The attacking team, of course, in Voidstar generally has a little advantage because, well, simply if they get a kill, the player of the defending team that got killed is stuck in respawn and cannot really support the fight for, between 10 to 30 seconds, depending on the map and depending how long is left on the door, of course. Amarilla Smith goes down here. In general, the Deception Sin, I think in this game, maybe not the best pick. You can see why Deception is not rated that highly. It's just, it kind of struggles. It doesn't do anything against snipers. Has also a hard time staying on the Sork heals. Sork heals, of course, could be running something like the Flash Bubble, the Bubble Stun. So that's going to be a rough time for the melees in general. I think it's more of a ranged meta at the moment, as we see Yugi, the Annihilation Marauder, going down. Almost going down, actually not quite. Manages to survive. Of course, both teams have 2 healers here, so there is a lot of HPS. And the one thing that's good about Annihilation is that, of course, the AoE is quite nice as well. But at the same time, it provides a lot of extra HPS. If you're going to pop Berserk, you have your dots tick on everyone, and they will automatically crit and heal your team for a little bit. But nevertheless, we can expect the melees will take the brunt of the damage here again, as Amarilla Smith dies for the second time. Yugi is taking quite a lot of damage, but you can see Team Snave is pulling back a little bit. And one thing I wanted to focus on in this game is the positioning, because we can see that basically both teams have kind of a backline, and then in the middle, there's basically the melees fighting it out. And in general, that's, a classic front-to-back team fight, how you want to have it. If you're a sorcerer on Team Snave, you do not want to be in the middle of the map, right where, for example, the snipers of Team Ivano are positioned. But at the same time, if you are for Nim here, for example, you don't necessarily want to be right next to a pillar, right? Because a lot of your damage is still going to come from channeling those cults. And, if you're targeting Rayfi on the enemy team, for example, a PowerTech can simply dodge in and out of the pillars, let's say. And this way can interrupt all of your culls. So ideally, if you're playing a sniper on Team Ivano here, you want to be kind of where Aphonim is, could be maybe a little bit more in the front right now. Maybe where Arcanum is standing. But you don't necessarily want to be right next to a pillar. But it depends also a little bit. I think later in this Warzone we will see that Team Snave is stacking up a little bit, which allows Sork Crazy here on Lightning to do some massive AoE damage. But right now it looks like Team Snave is pushing a little bit. Spaghetti, of course, the top DPS from the first match, absolutely free casting. Looks like no one is touching him right now. He is a bit of a mystery man, so he joined the Discord. I had no idea who he was before. He just joined the first time for this event. Initially, we thought he is maybe a transfer from Starforge, but turns out later that he actually is from Tulakot, the mystery man himself. We are not quite sure who that is. If you know him, post it in the comments below. But again, in this match, he also performed very nicely, as we see a nice double knockback right there. So at this point, Team Snave is really pushing. Amarilla Smith gets knockbacked, and now everyone is focusing her. That's exactly what I was talking about in the first match. The focus is extremely on point between Rayfi, between Ashedan, and of course Ivano as well, the lethality operative. You can see now they're all focusing Cap, who I think is still playing Carnage. No, actually he's also playing Annihilation. You can see that from the buffs that he has. So double Annihilation Marauder. Should be a little bit tankier. I mean, the thing for Team Ivano is really like in the last match, they just kind of got steamrolled because they didn't have any frontline. There was only one melee, right? So now they have 3 melees. But unfortunately, Amarilla Smith goes down again. It looks like they're getting steamrolled a little bit again. So while they do have melees now, right, that can protect their ranges, the melees that they have are not the best at actually taking damage and surviving and tanking for the team, right? Even though they have double Annihilation Marauder with the extra heals, and they do have 2 heals in the back trying to keep them up. But the Deception is just too squishy. It can't really chase anyone down. And only one of those classes has taunts, which is the Deception Sin, right? But if the Deception Sin simply gets focused here, then the taunts don't really do anything. So yeah, that's just a problem. And on the other hand, Team Snave still has the same comp, the Rage Juggernaut of Ashedan and Rayfi's APPT, which of course means, you have at least 2 sources of taunts. And, that just means, let's say they're focusing Rayfi, then Ashedan can mass taunt. Everyone will be doing 30% less damage, and the other way around, right? So overall, the comp, I still like Team Snave's comp more here. So now we see the Marauder and the Deception Sin respawning. The fight has kind of moved to the left side here. Positioning is a little bit interesting as we see Rayfi using hydraulics to pull Amarilla Smith away from the heals and then basically just one-shot her together with Baguetti. Very nice play. Definitely one to watch out for this combo. And I think we'll see them use the same combo later again. Respawn opens. I think the respawn on Voidstar, I'm not sure when it was changed, but at some point it was changed. And in my opinion, it's a little bit too easy to defend now. Because, yeah, while in this game, they were not really trying to play objectives or to cap the doors. I think everyone has been in a Warzone recently where, there were maybe a couple of tanks and then some assassins with 2 cloaks that just can basically keep a door indefinitely. And in the past, I think the respawn was a bit longer, so it was more punishing if you actually died. Yeah, nowadays the respawn is quite short, so we see the double Annihilation Marauder leap in there, but the healer simply phase walks out. As Amarilla Smith goes down again, a lot of pressure on Team Ivano here. Rayfi and Ashedan, both of them, I think, again, tanked quite a lot of damage. So the melees doing the hardest job, trying to deal damage while also taking damage here. Whereas look at Baguetti, he's just sitting there, he's absolutely free casting. And it's a hard time for Cap and Yugi trying to keep up with the enemy front line. Of course, Asana, for example, is not any Marauder player. He is, in fact, currently the leader of the Warzone Records DPS board when it comes to the highest DPS ever recorded for any Marauder. But yeah, playing Annihilation in this kind of setup, you're going to have kind of a hard time. I think it is better if you're playing against a lot of tanks and everyone is stacking, so you can spam AoE. The smash cooldown is so low. But here in this game, maybe I would like to see them to swap to something like double Carnage for really just like single target focus. So now we're in round 2. We haven't really talked a lot about the heals, but of course we have the same setup as last time. Arcanum and Mala, who, by the way, I also don't know who exactly Mala is. Also seen him or her the first time here in this event. But all heals, I think, performed very well. And of course, on Team Snave over there, we have Loom, who is one of the highest healing commandos. I think holds a couple of Warzone HPS records as well. And then Oberey, who I think is currently the number 3 highest HPS ever on the HPS leaderboard. So let's see what happens now. Theoretically, now Team Ivano should have the upper hand. Because again, Attacker gives you the little advantage that even if you die, you respawn immediately, so it's not even so bad to die. This is why Voidstar Attacker Round is my favorite map when playing APPT. You can simply go in, one-shot someone, and then even if you die, which, you die quite a lot on APPT, you can simply come back and keep pushing, But I think the difference next to the kind of the class setup in this game is, again, the focus. And another thing I want to point out is, if you look at SWTOR, who is playing the elemental convection build, and look at what Lev is doing. Lev is constantly on his ass. I didn't really point this out, but if you go back and watch round 1 again, he was basically every time that every second of the first round already, he was absolutely hounding him. So he was chasing him, trying to keep the hard stun on cooldown, just trying to make his life very hard, and that's exactly what you want to do, of course, on concealment. The worst thing you can do is let a lightning sorcerer free cast. Lightning, of course, with this build, one of the strongest AoE specs in the game, capable of doing 30k DPS. And we're going to see a little bit of that actually right now, as Lev gets pushed back. Of course, he needs to wait for his evasion to come back up, otherwise he's just going to be a sitting duck. And again, this is playing for kills, so whoever gets the most kills wins the game. So you don't want to die. But look at the positioning right now of Team Snave. They're all in the corner, and SWTOR is absolutely spamming the Force Storm. I'm not too sure about this knockback, because they were in a great position for AoEing. Now they're a little bit more protected. But yeah, you don't want to be in this corner necessarily. If your team has the AoE disadvantage, you never want to be stacking up, right? And conversely, on the other side, if you have a Lightning Sorc on your team, so your team Ivano, you want the enemies to stack up. But looks like Team Snave fixed it pretty quickly. They're not stuck anymore all behind the pillar. Especially Baguetti, look at him there over on the left side. This is positioning how you want to do it. Not too close to the pillar. As he gets diversioned, it has to reposition. But you don't necessarily want to, be in the big 8-man stack where the Lightning Sorc is just going to carry the game. Lev, again, sitting on SWTOR, making his life difficult. I think at the end you will see that, while Lev did not top the DPS charts, spoiler alert, he was still quite effective, right? Because the game is playing for kills. It's not who has the most DPS wins. It is playing about kills. And if you can shut down the Lightning Sorcerer, keep him from casting those Thundering Blasts, then, that's going to be very helpful in, basically making sure that he doesn't just one-shot your whole team with the AoE. Yeah, and on the other side of Team Ivano, yeah, the Deception Sin, like I said, really having a hard time. A lot of people were also complaining about, low FPS in this Warzone. I don't know. I think it's a general issue if you have, a Lightning Sorc that can cause a lot of desync. But for sure, that's a bigger issue for melee characters if you have, that kind of desync or low FPS. Because, with some melees, you need to be in 4-meter range in the case of concealment. Deception has some 10-meter attacks, but ideally, you also want to be in 4-meter range there. So melee for sure is harder to play because, yeah, it's more affected by low FPS. And then also you're going to be the main target if you're playing something like Deception that doesn't really have a lot of damage reduction, compared to something like an APPT at least. So yeah, we can see Rafi here engaging on SWTOR. SWTOR kind of tries to ignore it. I mean, you want to play towards your strengths, right? If you're SWTOR here, you don't want to be single target focusing a PowerTech. You don't really want to 1v1. Ideally, you want to kite and then just spam your AoE into as many people as you can. That really is going to be your best bet. But yeah, overall, as we see Mala go down, which I think was the first time actually that they killed the Bodyguard heal. Bodyguard, of course, very hard to kill. The big difference here when you look at the classes is that one of the teams, Team Snave, is very focused on single target and focus on getting kills. And the other team is more of an AoE, spread damage, double annihilation comp team. Yeah, and one thing clearly works better than the other, at least in this format. Of course, we are not having tanks, which is, another important thing to point out. Because if you would have tanks, the best thing they have, of course, is guard, meaning you can take a lot of the single target focus, power out of the game. And then the AoE, would be better. But since we don't have tanks, that's just an advantage for the single target focus comp of Team Snave here. 2 minutes left, and as we can see, Lev is doing the same thing he has been doing all day. Now together with Rafi, chasing SWTOR, who manages to kite away. I think in this game, he was playing the Vault Rush build, so he does not have Face Walk. So really needs to be careful. because he can die easily, right, once the barrier is down. Lev again on him, he's force speeding away. As Lev repositions, and look at Baguetti, he's just sitting there. No one is even looking at the snipers. Where So Crazy is just AoE casting into the corner there. Another player that I didn't really talk about a lot, I think, is Ivano in this one, the Lethality Operative on Team Snave. Performed actually very well in both games, with very solid DPS. Of course, Lethality should be having a bit of an easier time in this match, because now there are more melees on Team Ivano to spread the dots on. Lethality, of course, has still the biggest dot spread in the game. Not the best class for single target focus, let's say. But yeah, I think the team comp works out quite well, because you have Rafi on APPT doing a good job together with Ashedan with a single target focus. Lev is shutting down the enemy Sorg. And then you have Ivano to kind of provide that AoE pressure that eventually also adds up and can just be too much for the enemy healers to keep up with. Overall, I think maybe a similar match, to be honest, to the N.O.H.A, with a clear advantage in kills for Team Snave. As we see the last 10 seconds stacking down. Again, this position is very good for So Crazy to cast his AoE. So Team Snave doesn't really want to be stacking in the corner there in this diversion. Luckily for them, the match ends at this point, and they manage to take away the win. Taking a look at the scoreboard, 37 kills for Team Snave here. And the highest kill on Team Ivano, 12. So quite a big difference. And we can see really the difference in the comps here playing out. Baguetti with the highest DPS recorded so far, 18.6k. Not quite a record, but very, very solid. Of course, helped by the fact that he was also the player in the game next to the other sniper that took the least damage overall. So Crazy, very impressive, and the best DPS on Team Ivano. As I was pointing out, he was completely haunted by Lev's operative. He will probably be checking under his bed tonight to see if there's a Lev down there. 10 million damage taken, but manages to output 16k. Best of his team, very solid showing. And finally, looking at the game stats, we can see that actually the DPS was pretty close and the HPS surprisingly was identical. That's because the two Annihilation Marauders really helped with the team HPS. Protection, of course, went the way of Team Snave, but mostly it was how the DPS was delivered with a great focus of Team Snave, leading to 37 kills to 12 for Team Ivano. Top DPS on both teams, Baguetti and So Crazy, and the top tunnel targets were Asana on Team Ivano and Ashedan, who sets a new record with 18.3k DPS taken. That's just Jug Life, but nevertheless he still manages to do 13k DPS. Very solid showing. All in all, Team Snave takes a commanding 2-0 lead after a 15-minute deathmatch on Voidstar. And of course, this was game 2 out of 9 total games that I'm going to upload. So if you enjoyed this one, make sure to leave the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.